I've often wondered if a country like ours that was established using enslaved people and mistreating the native people who are already here would ever really be able to get beyond that. Even though we don't allow slavery to happen that way anymore, it's created a deep-rooted racism here that we just can't seem to move through. And I feel that if people in the past had the capacity to not only think owning people as slaves was okay, but actually do that, people can have that capacity now. So I feel like slavery isn't over. It just happens in different ways. But when it comes to racism, we have some folks that are really working to figure out how we can get beyond it. And we have the people who are actually involved in perpetuating racism. And there are many, many people who, when asked about racism, say, oh no, I'm not a racist. I don't hate people that are different than me. And they kind of dismiss that they have any part of it or feel like they can't really do anything about it. I found this quote from Stanford psychology professor Stephen O. Roberts that I think is the best definition of what we're actually dealing with here. He says, people often define racism as disliking or mistreating others on the basis of race. That definition is wrong, he says. Racism is a system of advantage based on race. It's a hierarchy. It's a pandemic. Racism is so deeply embedded within the U.S. minds and U.S. society that it is virtually impossible to escape. Just as citizens of capitalistic societies reinforce capitalism, whether they identify as capitalist or not, and whether they want to or not, citizens of racist societies reinforce racism, whether they identify as racist or not, and whether they want to or not. So we don't have to be actively hating or mistreating other races. We're just in it. It's in all aspects of our society. And so many people deny that it exists, or they don't want to see it or talk about it. And they don't want the history of our racism known. So how can we learn from it? How are we ever going to get beyond it? Well, we can start by learning from our history of racism, not erasing it. I know it's unpleasant. I know. And maybe your family tree has some gnarly branches on it, but we can change that. And we can grow new branches that are compassionate, loving, kind, and intentionally part of the solution.